Sienna's childhood smelled like bleach and resentment. For years, her stepmother, Margot, treated her like a live-in maid. At 12, Sienna scrubbed floors while Margot watched TV, her high heels kicked off beside a wine glass. Faster, Margot would snap, tossing her a moldy rag to clean the bathroom. You're useless unless you're useful. By 18, Sienna escaped to college, working 3 jobs to pay tuition while Margot never once called to check if she was alive. 10 years later, Sienna owned a thriving bakery, her hands now dusted with flour instead of cleaning chemicals. That's when Margot reappeared, her voice trembling through the phone. I need help, she said. The bank was seizing her house. Her new husband left her penniless. Could Sienna lend her $20,000? Family helps family, Margot insisted. As if the word family hadn't choked Sienna for decades. Memories flooded back. The time Margot threw Sienna's birthday cake in the trash for being too dry. The night Sienna slept hungry because Margot forgot to buy groceries. But now Margot was crying, her pride crumbling like stale bread. Sienna's therapist warned her, don't light yourself on fire to keep others warm. Still, part of her wondered, what if Margot's changed? They met at the bakery. Margot looked smaller, her designer handbag replaced by a frayed tote. She rambled about debts, her eyes avoiding Sienna's. I'll pay you back, she promised, but her voice lacked its old sharpness. Sienna hesitated. Then she noticed Margot's phone buzzing, a notification from a luxury spa. Old habits. I'll lend the money, Sienna said, watching hope flicker in Margot's eyes. But you'll sign a contract, monthly payments, interest, and she paused. A public apology. Tell everyone what you did. Margot's face hardened. After everything I sacrificed for you, she hissed. Sienna slid a photo across the table, her 12-year-old self, knees bruised from scrubbing. You didn't sacrifice anything. You stole. Margot stormed out, but the next day, her brother called. She's homeless. How could you? Relatives bombarded Sienna with texts. Selfish, ungrateful. Yet Sienna stayed calm. She'd learned to knead dough until it softened, not her heart. Weeks passed. Margot's desperation grew. She showed up at the bakery during closing time, makeup streaked. Fine, I'll sign. The contract demanded honesty. At a family dinner, Margot stammered an apology, her voice shaking. I wasn't kind to Sienna. The room fell silent. Aunt Linda gasped. Cousin Mark walked out. But Sienna's brother squeezed her hand. Finally, someone saw the truth. Margot made 2 payments before vanishing. Sienna didn't chase her. Instead, she expanded her bakery, hiring teens escaping toxic homes. One morning, a customer snapped a photo of Sienna's Employee of the Month board, now filled with smiling faces, and it went viral. The Queen of Second Chances, the caption read. Months later, Sienna found an envelope taped to her door. Inside, a wad of cash and a note. I sold the spa packages. Not everyone gets a happy ending. M. The money smelled like regret and Chanel number 5. Sienna donated it to a shelter, her chest lighter than ever. At Christmas, Margot's sister called. She's working as a motel maid. Says the bleach reminds her of you. Sienna hung up, staring at the bakery's twinkling lights. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just whispered, funny how life cleans up its own messes, and went back to frosting a cake. Sweet, sturdy, and impossible to break. The bakery's success grew, its warmth spreading like butter on fresh bread. Sienna hired more staff, teenagers with tired eyes and hopeful smiles, kids who reminded her of her younger self. One girl, Lily, confided in her during a late-night shift. My stepdad says I'm lazy, she muttered, scrubbing a countertop raw. Sienna handed her a cupcake. Some people confuse lazy with surviving, she said. Lily's laughter sounded like healing. Margot's apology video resurfaced online. A local news channel ran a segment titled The Stepmother Who Became a Meme. Strangers dissected her tearful confession in comments, calling her a washed-up villain. Sienna ignored the noise until Margot's sister called again. She's sick, she said. The motel fired her. She's living in her car. Sienna hung up, her chest tight. That night, she drove past the motel, spotting Margot's rusty sedan parked under a flickering streetlight. A shadow hunched over the steering wheel. Small, broken, unfamiliar. Days later, a well-dressed man visited the bakery. He introduced himself as Margot's ex-husband, Richard. "She told me you ruined her life," he said, smirking. "But I know the truth. She's a leech." He slid a folder across the counter. Photos of Margot at casinos, dates stamped during Sienna's childhood. "She blew through my money, too." Sienna's hands shook. All those years Margot claimed to be struggling, she'd been gambling. The $20,000 loan request? Likely another bet. Richard leaned closer. "Sue her. I'll testify." Sienna shoved the folder back. "I'm not you," she said coldly. But that night she dreamt of 12-year-old Margot, not the tyrant, but a girl herself, hiding bruises under her sleeves. Had anyone shown her kindness? The next morning, Sienna found Lily crying in the pantry. "My stepdad kicked me out," she whispered. Without hesitation, Sienna offered her the bakery's tiny office-turned-guest room. "Stay as long as you need," she said, handing her a key. Lily hugged her, and for a moment, Sienna felt Margot's absence like a ghost limb. Weeks later, Margot appeared at the bakery again, her face gaunt. "I need money for medicine," she croaked. Sienna crossed her arms. "Sign a new contract. No lies, no casinos, and therapy." Margot laughed bitterly. "Still trying to fix me." But her hands trembled. She reached for the pen. The agreement was simple. Margot would work part-time at the bakery, washing dishes. "Minimum wage," Sienna said. "Earn your keep." The staff eyed Margot warily. Lily glared, protective as a guard dog. But slowly, something shifted. Margot didn't complain. She scrubbed pans in silence, her once manicured nails chipped and stained. One afternoon, Sienna caught her slipping Lily a $20 bill. "For whatever," Margot mumbled, avoiding eye contact. The twist came on a rainy Tuesday. A customer recognized Margot. "Isn't this the evil stepmother?" she sneered, filming her on her phone. Margot froze, then did the unexpected. She apologized. Not the stiff, scripted apology from before, but a raw, shaky whisper. "I was cruel. I'm trying not to be." The video went viral. This time, the comments were different. "People can change?" This hit me in the mom issues. Sienna didn't trust it, but when Margot showed up with a packed lunch for Lily, "You're too skinny," she wondered. One evening, she found Margot staring at the Employee of the Month board. "You built this," Margot said quietly, "despite me." Sienna said nothing, but for the first time, the air between them didn't taste like poison. The ending wasn't perfect. Margot relapsed once, caught buying lottery tickets. Sienna nearly fired her, but Lily intervened. "Give her another chance," she pleaded. "Like you gave me." Sienna agreed, her throat tight. Years later, at the bakery's grand reopening, Margot hovered near the dessert table, handing out samples. Her hands, once red from bleach, now bore calluses from honest work. A customer asked, "Who's the old lady?" Lily grinned. "That's our dishwasher, and my friend, I guess." Sienna watched them, a bittersweet ache in her chest. Margot would never be a mother, but under the bakery's golden lights, forgiveness looked a lot like a woman quietly wiping tables, her past scrubbed away one plate at a time. The bakery's annual charity event brought the town together, its tables overflowing with cakes and hope. Sienna had organized it to raise funds for teens like Lily, kids with nowhere to go. Margot, now a permanent fixture in the kitchen, scrubbed trays silently, her hands raw but steady. Lily joked about teaching her to frost cupcakes, but Margot waved her off. "I'll stick to what I know," she muttered, though Sienna noticed her sneaking glances at the recipe books. The twist came during the event's speech. Sienna stood at the podium, thanking the crowd, when a man shouted from the back, "Hypocrite!" The room froze. It was Margot's brother, face flushed with anger. "You parade as a saint, but you're squeezing my sister dry." He waved papers, copies of the loan contract. "She's your slave," the crowd buzzed. Cameras flashed. Sienna's throat tightened, but before she could speak, Margot stepped forward. "Stop." Her voice cracked, but it carried. She snatched the papers, her eyes blazing. "I chose this. Sienna gave me a job when no one else would." The room fell silent as Margot turned to her brother. "You never cared when I was cruel. Why start now?" He stormed out, leaving whispers in his wake. Margot handed the mic back to Sienna, her shoulders stiff. Finish your speech, she said, retreating to the kitchen. Later, Sienna found Margot scrubbing a burnt pan, her cheeks wet. Why defend me? Sienna asked. Margot didn't look up. You didn't ruin my life. I did, she hesitated. And Lily said I'm part of the team, whatever that means. Sienna almost smiled. Almost. The real surprise came the next morning. A letter arrived from Richard, Margot's ex-husband. Inside was a check for $20,000, the full loan amount. A note read, "Sell this story to a publisher. I want my cut." Sienna scoffed, ready to tear it up, but Margot snatched it. Wait, her voice trembled. Use it, for the shelter. Sienna narrowed her eyes. Why? Margot shrugged. Richard owes me, and maybe I owe you. She paused. Not everything's a trick. The money built a dormitory above the bakery, a safe place for runaways. At the ribbon cutting, Lily hugged Margot, who stiffened but didn't pull away. You're okay for a step monster, Lily teased. Margot rolled her eyes but slipped her an extra muffin. Months later, Sienna found Margot reading in the bakery's tiny library, a dog-eared copy of How to Apologize. She looked up, defensive. Lily's making me. Sienna smirked. Sure she is. The final twist came on a quiet Tuesday. A woman entered the bakery, her eyes scanning the room. Sienna, she asked, I'm Margot's daughter. The words hung like smoke. Margot froze, a plate slipping from her hands. The girl, no older than 20, glared. She abandoned me, just like you. Sienna's heart dropped. Margot had never mentioned a child, but Margot stood, her voice barely a whisper. I was worse than you think. She confessed to giving up the girl years ago, too young and selfish to care. I thought money would fix it. It didn't. The girl left, slamming the door. Margot didn't chase her. That night, Sienna found her scrubbing the same spot on the floor, over and over. Stop, Sienna said gently. Margot shook her head. Some stains don't come out. But the next morning, Margot was gone. A note lay on the counter. Tell Lily I'm sorry. And thank you. Attached was a key to her car, the rusty sedan now parked outside the bakery, filled with blankets and canned food. For the kids, the note said. Sienna never saw her again. But years later, a postcard arrived. No return address. Just a photo of a beach at sunset and 2 words. Still trying. At the bakery, Lily hung it beside the Employee of the Month board. Proof people change, she said. Sienna nodded, her eyes lingering on Margot's messy handwriting. She didn't know if it was true, but as she bit into a cupcake, sweet with a hint of salt, she decided some stories didn't need endings, just the hope of one. Years passed, and the bakery became a beacon in town, its shelves stacked with pastries and second chances. Sienna's shelter housed dozens of teens, their laughter echoing through the dormitory upstairs. Lily, now a manager, handled customers with a confidence that made Sienna proud. The postcard Margot sent, still trying, hung framed by the cash register, a quiet mystery no one dared to solve. One rainy afternoon, a woman walked in, her face pale but familiar. It was Margot's daughter, Emma, her eyes red-rimmed and hands clutching a wrinkled photo. She's gone, Emma said flatly. Margot had died in a coastal town, alone. The news settled like dust. Sienna felt nothing at first, then a pang of something she couldn't name. Emma slid a journal across the counter. She wanted you to have this. The pages were filled with Margot's jagged handwriting, apologies, regrets, and stories Sienna never knew. Margot wrote about her own childhood, a mother who'd locked her in closets, a father who'd called her useless. I didn't know how to love you, one entry read. I only knew how to survive. Sienna closed the book, her throat tight. That night, she baked Margot's favorite cake, a vanilla sponge she'd once thrown in the trash, and left a slice by the framed postcard. The twist came weeks later. A lawyer called. Margot had left everything to Sienna. Her rusty car, a small savings account, and a faded locket with a photo of young Sienna inside. There's one more thing, the lawyer said. A donation in Sienna's name to a charity for abused children, funded by Margot's casino winnings. Tell her it's clean money, Margot had scribbled in a note. This time, it's clean. Sienna stood in the bakery's kitchen, the locket cold in her palm. Lily peeked in, holding a burnt tray. Need help? Sienna shook her head, then paused. Actually, yes. Together, they scrubbed the tray, the rhythm steady and familiar. At closing time, Sienna opened Margot's journal again. Tucked in the back was a recipe for vanilla cake, its edges stained with what looked like teardrops. Underneath, Margot had written, "You were right. Some messes can't be fixed, but they can be sweetened." The next morning, Sienna added the cake to the menu, the Margot special. Customers raved about its lightness, unaware of the bitterness folded into its layers. Emma visited once, ate a slice in silence, and left without a word. Sienna never learned if Margot found peace, but as she watched Lily teach a new teen how to knead dough, gentle, patient, nothing like Margot's sharp commands, she realized some legacies weren't about blood. They were about breaking cycles, one recipe at a time. The bakery's door chimed, the scent of sugar wrapping the room like a hug. Sienna glanced at the postcard, then at the bustling shop. For the first time, she whispered, "Thank you," to no one, or maybe to Margot. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the puddles into glitter. Life, like frosting, could be messy, but it was hers. All hers. The Margot special became the bakery's star item, its popularity bittersweet. Customers devoured the vanilla cake, oblivious to the history baked into every slice. Sienna kept Margot's journal locked in her office, its pages a ghost she couldn't shake. Then, on a slow Tuesday, a sharp-dressed woman strode in, her gaze scanning the room like a hawk. "I'm here to review your bakery," she announced, flashing a press badge. "The Daily Bite." Lily panicked. What if she hates the cake? Sienna shrugged, but her stomach churned. The critic Naomi ordered everything, cupcakes, croissants, and 2 slices of the Margot special. She scribbled notes, her face unreadable. When she left, Sienna found a business card tucked under a plate. "Call me. It's about Margot." Naomi answered on the first ring. "Your stepmother donated to my sister's shelter years ago, paid her rent, saved her life." Sienna froze. Margot's journal had mentioned nothing about this. "Why tell me now?" Naomi sighed. "She made me promise to wait until after she died. Said you'd throw the money back in her face, otherwise the article published the next morning. 5 stars. But the headline cut deeper. The redemption cake. How a bakery heals generations of wounds. Comments flooded in, a mix of praise and venom. "Saint Sienna," one wrote. "Convenient time to play hero," sneered another. Sienna stared at Margot's postcard, its edges frayed. Still trying. Then came the voicemail. A shaky voice whispered, "I knew Margot. She sent money every month. For my kids." The caller, a stranger named Rosa, lived 3 towns over. She said it was rent for being a bad person. Rosa sent letters, postmarked from the same coastal town on Margot's postcard. Each contained a child's drawing labeled, "Thank you, Lady M." Sienna drove to Rosa's cramped apartment, a box of Margot specials in hand. Rosa's kids hugged her legs, their smiles gap-toothed and bright. "She bought us school books," Rosa said, tears in her eyes. "Told me to do better than she did." Sienna handed her the box. "She stole a lot," Sienna admitted, "but I guess she gave some back." Back at the bakery, Lily met her with news. "Someone's copying our recipes. A new cafe down the street." The rival bakery's window boasted, "The Serena special, better than the original." Sienna's blood boiled, until she saw the owner, a young woman, barely 20, with Margot's sharp chin and Sienna's stubborn glare. Emma, Margot's daughter. "You don't own vanilla cake," Emma challenged, arms crossed. Sienna laughed, the sound surprising even her. "True, but I do own the story." She slid Rosa's letters across the counter. Emma read them, her defiance crumbling. "She helped them, but not me." Sienna softened. "She didn't know how, but you've got a chance to." The next week, Emma's cafe rebranded. The Second Chance Special, 50% to shelter teens. Lily delivered a basket of Margot's recipes, no strings attached. "Don't make it weird," she said, though her smile betrayed her. That night, Sienna opened Margot's journal to a blank page and wrote, "People aren't recipes. You can't fix them. Just try to make them sweeter." She tucked Rosa's letters inside and snapped the journal shut. At dawn, the bakery's ovens hummed, filling the air with warmth. Lily danced to the radio, flower in her hair. A new batch of teens clattered plates, their voices loud and alive. Sienna iced a Margot special, her hands steady. Somewhere, she imagined Margot nodding, not quite smiling, but close. The bell jingled. Emma walked in, holding a cafe flyer. "Truce?" she asked, hesitant. Sienna slid her a slice. "Truce." As Emma bit into the cake, her eyes widened. "It's good." "Yeah," Sienna said, staring at the postcard. "It is." Outside, the sun rose, turning the bakery's sign golden. The line of customers stretched down the block, a mix of old wounds and new beginnings. Life, Sienna realized, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about folding it into something stronger, something that could hold the weight of all that sweetness and sorrow, and still rise. The bakery thrived, its tables always crowded, but winter brought a frost no oven could melt. Donations to the shelter dwindled. Heating bills soared. Sienna stayed late most nights, crunching numbers, while Lily taught the newest teen, Jax, how to pipe frosting without trembling. "Like this," Lily said, steadying his hand. Jax had arrived a month prior, his knuckles scarred, his laugh rare but bright. He never spoke about his past, but Sienna recognized the look, the same hollow stare she'd once worn. One icy morning, the shelter's pipes burst. Water flooded the dormitory, ruining mattresses and textbooks. Sienna stared at the mess, her breath fogging the air. Repairs would cost thousands. Emma arrived unannounced, boots sloshing through puddles. "Heard you're sinking," she said, arms crossed. For a heartbeat, Sienna braced for a jab, but Emma tossed her a folder. "My cafe's winter fundraiser plans. Steal whatever you want." They huddled in the bakery's kitchen, coffee steaming between them. Emma's ideas were sharp. A bake-a-thon auctioning VIP baking classes. Sienna smirked. "You've been paying attention," Emma shrugged. "Someone had to." As they worked, Jax lingered nearby, eyes glued to Emma's face. Finally, he blurted, "You look like her." "The lady who paid my grandma's rent." The room stilled. Emma frowned. "What lady?" "Lady M," Jax said. "She sent cash every month. Grandma called her a ghost." He dug into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled photo, a Polaroid of Margot, young and smiling, standing beside a woman who looked like Jax's grandmother. On the back, scribbled, "For Rosa's boy. Keep him safe. M." Emma's face paled. "That's my mom." Sienna's chest tightened. Margot had helped Jax's family years ago, long before Sienna's loan demand. Another secret, another thread tying them all together. The bake-a-thon blew past its goal. Half the town showed up, teens from the shelter kneading dough beside lawyers and teachers. Even Richard donated, smirking as he wrote a check. "For karma points," he said. Jax sold cupcakes decorated like comic book heroes, his scars hidden under oven mitts. Emma manned the espresso machine, barking orders like a pro. But the real twist came after. A courier delivered a yellowed envelope to Sienna. Inside, a deed to a building downtown, a forgotten property in Margot's name. A sticky note clung to it. "Bought this for you, in case you ever needed space to grow." M. The date? 2 weeks before Margot asked for the loan. The building was perfect. A spacious kitchen, rooms for dozens more teens. Emma traced the dusty windows. She was planning this all along. Sienna's eyes burned. Margot had schemed, even in her brokenness, to leave something good. They opened the new shelter on Margot's birthday. Jax hung the Polaroid by the entrance. "So she's not a ghost anymore," he said. That night, Sienna baked the Margot special, its vanilla layers lighter than ever. Emma brought a new cake, dark chocolate, bitter and rich. "For the other side of the story," she said. Customers devoured both. An elderly woman lingered, her gaze on the Polaroid. "I knew Margot," she murmured. "We met at a support group. She cried the whole time." Sienna handed her a plate. "What changed?" The woman smiled. "You did." As snow fell outside, Sienna found Jax teaching Lily how to skateboard in the empty parking lot. Their laughter echoed off the bakery's walls, warm and alive. Emma stood beside her, silent. Finally, she said, "I'm naming my next cake the Jax Special." Sienna grinned. Better not steal my frosting recipe. Inside, the oven timer dinged. The scent of sugar and hope wrapped around them, stubborn as always. Margot's postcard still hung by the register, its edges frayed, its message fading. But Sienna didn't need words anymore. The recipe was simple now. Take the bitter, add the sweet, and keep baking. Life didn't forgive, but it did go on. The new shelter buzzed with life, its walls echoing with homework sessions and midnight giggles. But spring brought storms, literal and metaphorical. A health inspector slapped the bakery with a warning. Outdated fire exits, overcrowded kitchen. Fix it or close, he said. Sienna's savings were drained from shelter repairs. Lily suggested crowdfunding. Tell your story, she urged. Sienna hesitated. Margot's journal sat heavy on her desk, its pages screaming vulnerability. Emma stormed in, waving her phone. Look! A viral TikTok mocked the bakery's rat problem. A lie started by a rival cafe. Comments piled up. Gross! Knew that place was shady. Sienna's hands shook. Then Jack spoke up. We'll film the truth. Teens grabbed phones, recording spotless kitchens, flower fights, and Lily's fire exit dance tutorial. By dawn, the hashtag #BakeryTruth trended. Donations poured in. The inspector returned, surprised. Never seen a community fight this hard, Sienna whispered. We've had practice. Summer heat wilted the bakery's flowers, but not its spirit. Sorting Margot's old boxes, Sienna found a sealed envelope labeled, When You're Ready. Inside, a key and a map to a storage unit. Dusty boxes inside held childhood toys Sienna thought were trashed, a dollhouse, her tattered poetry journal. Beneath them lay a stack of letters Margot had written but never sent. I hated you for looking at me the way I looked at my mother, one read. You reminded me I was broken. Emma found her crying in the storage unit. She kept all this? Sienna nodded. Why? Emma picked up a faded teddy bear. Maybe she couldn't let go either. They donated the toys to the shelter, but Sienna kept the letters. That night, she added a line to the Margot special menu. Pair with coffee. Tears optional. Fall's first chill brought the bakery's 10th anniversary. Regulars crammed the shop, sharing stories of first dates and healed hearts. Sienna hung Margot's letters in a shadow box beside the postcard. Still trying, Lily nudged her. Speech time, Sienna stood, her voice steady. This place wasn't built by me. It was built by kids who escaped dark places, by a stepmother who taught me cruelty and courage. Her eyes found Emma, Jax, Lily, and by second chances we didn't know we needed. The crowd clapped, but Sienna's gaze lingered on a woman in back, gray-haired, face hidden under a scarf. She vanished before Sienna could reach her. On the counter lay a locket Sienna hadn't seen in years, Margot's now holding 2 photos, young Sienna, young Emma. That night, Sienna sat alone, the locket warm in her palm. Lily's laughter drifted from the shelter upstairs. Emma texted, Cafe's packed. Thanks for the push. The bakery's ovens hummed, steady as a heartbeat. Margot's journal stayed closed. Some questions didn't need answers. Some endings weren't endings, just pauses in a recipe that kept growing. Sienna slipped the locket on, stepped into the kitchen, and began mixing a new cake, something bold, something hers. Outside, leaves swirled in the wind, carrying the first frost. But inside, the ovens glowed, stubborn and bright. Life, like frosting, could always be reinvented. All you needed was the courage to try.